So hi guys. Today we're going to talk about how to land your techniques in training to keep it more realistic. I see all the time people doing it wrong. They usually land their techniques. They couldn't actually drive through the target. If you imagine when you land a side kick, right? So you want to drive through the target. You want to injure the knee. So you're not going to injure the knee if you kick it like here, okay? So because from here, you don't have any movement towards the target anymore because your technique is extended. You have no way to drive through it anymore. So when you train, okay, even if you movement, you want to get used to it to land the technique here, right? So you can drive it further through. What you don't do is, of course, you don't drive all the way through the knee with your training part. So usually this is a tricky part because you need a lot of repetitions. You need to have, so you have the control, so you can decide how much power or how much inches or centimeters do I drive through the knee so I don't actually injure my training partner. Especially imagine if he comes in, you kick then too hard for the knee or too much, you would simply injure him. What you also don't want to do is train like this. So this here, I've seen that often that the people are actually either too slow in this particular situation or they react too late. So they can't execute. The sidekick guy comes in and then they land something weird. They don't kick, they kick like this. They don't land properly. The side kick is meant to be kicked properly like here and not like this. Okay, so when he comes in, you don't want to kick like that. So what you want to do is to kick, it's the same mechanic, just off to side. And then we go like slow motion. As he comes in, you go here, okay, you turn your foot to the target, and you extend the leg into the target. So now the tricky part is, of course, to have your control and not to land in the extended position, not to land like this, okay? Because this would be a bad habit. Imagine you kick a guy, he steps in and you kick him, okay, just like on the surface. That's why it's important to practice. What you can do is your training partner, he comes in, you land, he goes back, he comes in, you land, he goes back, okay? He comes in, you land. Then you can add angles, okay? And you can even, if it's too close, you can even step back and kick. And you want to always kick like here, okay? So, and the end position is, your knee is still bent because you would actually drive through what you don't do here. So you land bent, and then you control yourself, so not to injure your guy. So, but still landing with the angle as if you would kick for real. Okay, so don't land too extended. Also, don't land too short. You see, people are too slow, and he comes in fast, and they try to do the side kick, and then they land this kind of weird technique. It's important not to lift the leg too much when you use the side kick as a counter, right? So because he comes in. If you lift the knee too much, you have lifted your leg and his fist is already here. What you want to do is also here, go direct. So if you go direct, this is your stance, right? So you go direct here as possible here to the target. Same idea, it's with the straight punches. When you train, you don't want to land like this, okay? And you touched him. And now especially if he has this protection that stands up, okay, so you don't want to aim at that. You want to actually aim to drive through. So, and when you punch him, you want to land like this, okay, because in reality, you will drive through, okay? So you don't want to land like here. There's no movement forward anymore. If you punch the guy like this, look at this one. There's no way he feels that. So if you train all the time like this would be a bad habit. So you want to actually land more bent, okay? And the hip is not even turned as fully in, because this would be, you would drive for the target. If you do this a few times with the powerful punches with your training partner, the training is over. So you do all this stuff, you do on the pads, and then you watch your training partner. If you want to go full out with this kind of techniques, by all means do it. Just watch the knees. Same as with this kind of technique at the back fist as well. So you don't want to land with the back fist too extended. So you want to land here, and then you control yourself. Don't go too hard. Usually you would go here. You would also with the back fist drive with the jaw, with your punch and the hip and everything, okay? So that's the tricky part. It's never 100% realistic when you train, even with gear. As Bruce said, as long there's not a perfect protection gear, there's only so much you can do. That's why you need to watch not to build up bad habits when it comes to this training. So that's why you have a pad work and you can go really full force, full extending, or full driving through. Also don't punch too short. That's also a very bad idea. Implementing footwork and everything, right? So it's always important. With the groin kick, it's so not so much the problem because, you know, you really don't need much force if he has no protection. I have dropped people with the groin kick where they had to go to the doctor, so, and really barely touching them. So if you hit, you know, the testicles, the tip of the testicles with the tip of your shoe, you probably drop the guy pretty quickly. You don't need to drive through as much with that. So with the hooks, it's also here. You watch not to drive too much through the target with your training partner. Especially, I mean, hooks are very powerful. If you want to train lifelong, you know, you want to train safe and also, you know, not walk away with some kind of brain damage down the years. Punching pads and stuff, it's okay, full force and everything. But as you train with your partner, you can only do so much because you don't really want to knock him out and to injure him, right? So guys, thanks for watching. See you next time.